Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com. You can find cool stuff in stock every day. And check out our co-sponsor, Mana Traders, the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MAGICMICS for 12% off your next subscription with Mana Traders. And we appreciate y'all doing that, as y'all have been supporting the show. My name is Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl.
Hey, guys. Welcome back.
Ruben Bressler.
How's it going?
Oh, everything is lovely. As we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who is the most eloquent in letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 mom cards. Ruben?
Well, I like to think of myself as the Colonel of Comedy, but this week's winner is Colonel of Comedy, who writes, "It's been this set more than any other that has sparked, pun intended, my interest in the lore of Magic the Gathering, wanting to devour every nugget of the history behind the game and the worlds. Lo and behold, I would receive stirring renditions of history as told through Evan Irwin's Forgotten Lore series, and fresh eyes, as Ruben Bressler, reflected upon the return to Ravnica. This is why my honorable mention is Invasion of Alara. For those who don't know, it is Alara where we first met Elspeth. It's also home to Ajani, who at one time stopped the Phyrexians, but as we know now, has been completed. In addition, Alara was the first time we heard of Bant, Grixis, Esper, Naya, and Jund, now staple words of Magic."
Absolutely. Now, Invasion of Alara does a lot. It's a battle. It's a siege. It is all 5 colors of Magic. It says when Invasion of Alara enters the battlefield, you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile 2 non-land cards with mana value 4 or less. You may cast one of those 2 cards without paying its mana cost, put one of them in your hand, and put the other cards exiled this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. It has 7 defense, which I believe is among the top numbers of defense. Mm-hmm. And it transforms into Awaken the Maelstrom. It's a sorcery that is all colors. Target player draws 2 cards. You may put an artifact card from your hand onto the battlefield. Create a token that's a copy of a permanent you control. Distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 creatures you control. And destroy target permanent and opponent controls. You just go nuts. Yeah. You just go nuts.
This does too much stuff. I like the Cascade flavor on the front.
Yes.
Because that's an Alara keyword.
Right.
The back of do a little bit of a lot is very similar to a card called Last Stand. That was one of the first 5-color sorceries in Magic. Very cool, very fun card.
Cascade, ick.
Cascade rules!
But no. Cascade fun, though.
Cascade was fun.
Spin the wheel.
Oh my gosh.
Cascade, you spun that wheel, you had some fun.
Gamble, no future. Come
That's
on.
Right.
I like it. I just don't necessarily like it in my Magic cards.
I love it in my Magic cards.
I mean, it's weird to me that people are like, Cascade, yay, but also D20s, boo. And I'm just like, what is,
Listen, some people like blackjack and some people like roulette. Just because you dislike one of those. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, you're right that the gamble aspect of the random number generation of Magic is in the random card that you draw. So when you get these other random effects like Cascade or like Invasion of Alara, it does feel a little bit more like Hearthstone.
So Cascade is done in 2 ways. One, where it feels randomy and gambly, which I'm not a fan of, or in the way where you're always cascading into the exact thing, the only thing it can hit in the deck, which makes the game very not interactable, which I don't like.
Which means Cascade... Well, Cascade needs to be on spells with higher converted mana costs, in my opinion, because the lower the mana cost, the more problems it causes.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
All the problem Cascade cards have been 3, right?
So, yeah, a lot of times people will do it, and I'm just like, am I dead? And they're like, yeah, as soon as I go through 59 cards in my deck, then you're going to die. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just scoop it up, and this is not very fun for me. Thanks.
Yeah, not great. And I want, because the bigger Cascades do have you spinning the wheel, different things happening. Having Cascade in a limited environment again has shown me just how fun and silly that can be. God,
I actually don't hate it in a limited environment. Like the Cascade cards, the 1 or 2 big ones that we have here, sure, it's going to hit a thing and it's fine. But just in general, as a mechanic, boo.
Yeah, I mean, and even Atali Primal Conqueror, which is kind of cascadey off the top decks or whatever. I literally was playing Sealed earlier and someone resolved it and I was like, cool, 2 mana pacifism or whatever. Smash on through, even though you got some free spells out of it. It's silly and fun.
Same with the blue-black team-up legend that I'm forgetting the name of.
Yes.
It's like you brainstorm, and then when it dies, you cast the top card.
Which is all sorts of fun. And look, Alara did get to define, the Bant and the Grixis and the Esper and the Shards, as it were. And I'm glad we kept on a bunch of those, and I hope they don't try too hard to redefine those at some point.
Yeah, we got Teamer Delver now instead of Rug Delver.
Hey, you remember back when that change happened. You remember. We were there. That was a whole thing. Now, congratulations to the Colonel of Comedy. Please contact us on Twitter DMs at MagicMikesCast for your prize. We're sorry we still use that service too, but we're still using it. Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway, and stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win the next gift certificate, because it is time to talk about the top 10 limited cards in March of the Machine, which is a very different list than my other one, and includes all sorts of cards that I enjoyed, I had fun with, that surprised me, brought some great gameplay moments, or just sort of showed what you could do in the format. And that said, let's go ahead and kick it off with here for our number 10. Ruben, what's your number 10?
Well, my list is going to be, I'm hoping that every card on my list is going to be in my email at the end of the season when it says these are your most popular commons and uncommons that you've picked. Because all of these cards are great. All of these cards, most of them make my deck in multiples, I would say. I would be blessed to have many of these cards in multiples. And the first one is just a staple of, I guess, kind of every deck that has blue in it. Like, a lot of the commons in particular, I would say, in this set, they are one color, but they don't go in every deck of that color. It doesn't feel like. Whereas if Farah's Dispersal goes in every blue deck that I play, like multiples go in every blue deck that I play. 2 generic and a blue gets you an instant that costs 2 less to cast if it targets an attacking creature. Return target creature to its owner's hand, surveil 2. So you have a 1 mana read the books, or read books. Let's forget what the thing from Strixhaven was called. You get a 1 mana bounce if it's attacking you, or just a generic.
Books.
What was that?
Borrowed books.
Borrowed books. There we go. And then 3 mana, just end of turn, bounce your blocker, bounce your thing that's giving you +1/+1 to stuff, and card searching. So surveil 2, get those lands out of the way, all that good stuff. This card's great.
Oh yeah, this is like one of my favorite spells because, and don't forget this, it targets any creature, and I have saved one of my own attacking creatures from their removal spell. Thanks much, I still get to surveil.
Yep.
Went over fine.
Very good.
Yeah, the cards in this set are pretty tricky. It's also a lot more of a longer format, so these sorts of bounce mechanics and things like that actually come in handy. Whereas in 1, it was just 1, 2, 3. If you took a turn to bounce a thing, you were going to die anyway.
All right, let's move on here to our number 10 for Nerd Girl. What you got?
My number 10 is my first of hire.
Oh, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes that happens. But my number 10, this was a weird card for me. This was a card where I was just like, because I was reading LSV's little notes on it because they're integrated via the Untap program and stuff. And it was like, this card's like a 4.0 or something, or 3.5, whatever. We gave it very high marks. And he was like, I just want to play multiples. I want to play this. I'm like, oh, well, I was not thinking this card was that good. I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was that good. But it turns out Nezumi Informant is that good. It's very straightforward. Black and a generic mana, 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. And that just gets oftentimes a really good spell. This whole format is full of bombs and or removal. So you can get a bomb or removal or a really good threat out of their hand. Playing multiples is great. Being able to bounce and play it again is fine. It's great with Convoke. There's a whole variety of reasons why it's like cool. But I just was not expecting it to be as good as it ended up being, was the way I'd put that.
Yeah. It's like a good format for, this is just Relentless Rats, right?
Yeah.
It's Relentless Rats that they added Rogue to, which is a relevant creature type. There's a red-black sacrifice deck that this is an excellent body to sacrifice to that gets down early and allows you to sort of block before damage happens, play the draw 2 card, the Village Rites. just good value associated with this card. It's been a minute since Relentless Rats has been a kind of a playable card in Limited. And you're right. I've been having headaches every time somebody plays this against me.
Yeah.
So
I like Convoke. It's a good mechanic in the set.
yeah.
Yeah, and this works really, really well with it. So let's move on here to number 9. Ruben, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is another card that is just like this. This is an effect that is in every Limited environment. But for some reason, in this Limited environment, whenever my creature gets threatened, I lose the game. Every time. It's wild how good Furnace Reigns is compared to most threatens. And I don't really know why. I just know that Furnace Reigns has been punching way above its weight class for me. Furnace Reigns is 2 generic and a red for a sorcery. That's what you pay for a threaten. Gain control of target creature until the end of the turn. Untap that creature. Until end of turn, it gains haste. That's a threaten. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, create a treasure token. Amazing. There's so many good things to, like you said with the Informant.
Right.
The card quality is so much higher. So everything they discard, it sort of like fights at that weight class.
Mm-hmm.
Furnace Reigns is much the same way. You're stealing these big bomb creatures. You're stealing Aurelia the War Leader, right? You're stealing big giant idiots.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're attacking battles, you're getting that value as well. So there's a big switch there. Plus, like I mentioned, there's a red-black sacrifice deck. It's very easy to get rid of whatever you've stolen.
Galta leaves a lot of heavy impact when it hits the battlefield. There are a lot of just straight rares, like Glissa, for example, that do a ton of work for having them on your side of the board for just one turn. In addition to any possible upside you might have with sacrifice, there's a sacrifice removal spell. And there's actually quite a few free sack outlets in here as well. So I agree, it has been punching up.
Yeah, the format, because it is so balmy, it's often like uppercut. And when you can just take their stuff for that one turn and just completely change the tempo, and now you're ahead and they're behind, or you just steal their giant thing and kill them with it, which happens a lot. And also
your stupid team up legend.
Oh yeah, and not for nothing, that little treasure token can matter a lot, because sometimes it'll let you play a second spell that turn, which sometimes is the sack a creature, draw 2 cards, or whatever weird little thing that you're also doing. It does a ton of work in this set, which is awesome. So knowing what I have here on the sheet, and knowing that Ruben has absolutely no hires or sames or whatever, I also know that our number 9, Nerd Girl, is the exact same card. So tell us about our number 9, and I will tell him what it does.
All right. So, I put this card on my list because it has played extremely well for me and against me. Originally, when I looked at it, I was looking at the wrong side of this card. I don't mean flip, but I meant how I would go about using this, and I sort of underrated it a fair amount, which I'll talk about after Evan tells you guys about our card.
Woo! This card's a beating, quite frankly. It's a Saiba Cryptomancer. It's a blue and a generic mana 0/1, a common Moonfolk Ninja with flash, backup 1, and hexproof. So this is the first instance of backup 1, which means this creature enters the battlefield. You put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. If that's another creature, it gains the following ability until end of turn, which would be the hexproof. So at instant speed, you get to put hexproof essentially on whatever creature you want, while also making it larger, which is huge in these limited environments, so they can't use a removal spell on your creature to get rid of it and trick you or whatever. It does a whole variety of things, and it has been very impactful in my games.
So for me, what I did when I was evaluating this card, in my head, I put it in the 2-drop creature slot. And I was like, okay, I can flash it, and it's a 1/2 blocker. It can maybe do a thing. And I was not super excited about it. And I feel like once I took it out of my creature slot and put it in the Snakeskin Veil slot in the instants and sorceries, and it just happens to be an 0/1 body for me to sacrifice or throw under a very large dinosaur bus, then I got much happier with it and it started being very good. So I think that's the key distinction, is that you do not look at this as a 2-drop. You are never going to cast this on 2. Remove it from that slot entirely, and you will be very impressed with this card.
Absolutely, yeah. This card has blown games out of the water in my favor and more often against me. There's such good removal. There's quality removal happening. Lots of good targeted effects otherwise also. So having a body to attach to a snakeskin veil effect where that you counter their spell but then also have a body to either chump block or sacrifice has been huge.
Yeah, it's to me this is one of those like really highlights how good the design of backup is because of how fun it plays like in all the different scenarios. You know, you're taking the advantage and want to put a counter on to keep going, you're saving your creature, you're stopping a weird effect, like all sorts of cool stuff. All right, let's move on here to our number 8. Ruben, what's number 8?
My number 8, listen, you're gonna have a hard time finding a bigger fan of Gift of Paradises than your old buddy Mox Ruby here. I just love an overgrowth. It's what I want to be doing in my limited environments. I famously picked Gift of Paradise in Amonkhet draft, which was not the time to be playing slow limited environments. Fortunately, in this limited environment, we actually have time to like develop our mana and to play things on our lands and play 3 colors. And that's why I'm such a big fan of Blighted Burgeoning. Not only that, but also it goes in the Bees cube. So Blighted Burgeoning is 2 generic and a green for an enchant land aura. When it enters the battlefield, you incubate 2, which gives you that nice 2/2 body that you can flip later. And whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 additional mana of any color. I've been playing a lot of 3 and 4 color decks in this environment, and Blighted Burgeoning is a big reason why.
This is my number 10.
Nice.
The ramp fixing plus a body on the board is absolutely insane. And it has a few more really cool key interactions, which I will not spoil because the cards are in my later rankings.
I mean, it's been...
In that case, I will not say my favorite interaction with this card.
Interesting.
Is it white?
No, it's not.
Then go ahead.
Go for it.
All right. Portent Tracker is a hilarious like voyaging satyr effect that usually will untap a land. So like you get extra mana out of it. It also plays with battles pretty interestingly, but the fact that you can untap a land when you have Blighted Burgeoning in the environment means you can play your like 7 and 8 drops, of which there are playable ones in this set.
And also all the bombs have like double pips, like, you know, white, green, and it's like really hard to cast. One of these in your deck smooths that all out. It's nice and easy.
I think really trying to figure out how good an incubate token is and how big the incubate token that it makes is in contrast with the effect that you get is such a really cool kind of push and pull element of the whole set and makes a lot of spells really that much more interesting because you're like, well, this is a decent effect, but I'm also going to get that 2/2 off of it, which is pretty good. It's like one of the most playable Gift of Paradises that's been around in a long time. Partially because the environment's slower, but partially because of how much, advantage you get out of it.
Absolutely.
So that's sweet. Nerd Girl, what is your number 8? As I ask you while you take a drink of something.
Yeah. Come to your table and ask how dinner is while I'm eating.
Yeah. My number 8 is super simple. We're only going to talk about it briefly because it is a reprint, but my love for this little bug, it had to make my list. So we're going to talk about Skittering Surveyor. 3 colorless for a construct 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Having that consistent 4-drop land, being able to fix even in a 2-color deck is amazing. There is no deck where I will not want a Skittering Surveyor. The first one will never be cut. It doesn't matter what I'm doing.
Agreed. There's so many good interactions with this as well. You've got Scroll Shift at common, which I've been very pleasantly surprised with. There's lots of really cool stuff to be able to do with Skittering Surveyor in this set, in addition to the fact that it's just fine by itself.
Like, this is one of those cards that, again, I didn't show them until Dominaria, but Dominaria is the greatest limited set of all time. This is one of the greatest limited cards ever made. It's perfect. Everything on it is perfect. The numbers, the stats, the ability is there's no way to improve this in my opinion. There is you can make it a 3-mana 2/2 to whatever and push an envelope and whatever and make the numbers go up. But no, this is kind of what it needs to be. It's a tiny bit underpowered. It draws you a card. It fixes your mana. It works in all of those decks. I love it in every single deck I have it in. I mean, how much better is that? I don't know. How do you make a better card than that? It's just great.
It's great design. Real quick wanted to note, I think I might have, in my head I said it, but you were talking, and then I don't think I said it later, but the Blighted Burgeoning was my 10.
Yeah.
Yes,
you did mention.
You did.
Okay, good.
So for my number 8, this is a fantastic creature that I feel like is definitely on the upper end, if not the best version of this sort of cycle that they have. There's a whole bunch of cycles, obviously, but one of the cycles is these creatures that they transform using different colors of Phyrexian mana and flip over. Well, let me tell you, my boy Blight Reaper Thallid does the work. This man does the work. Unbelievable amount of work how good this thing is. It's a black and a generic mana for a 2/2 uncommon fungus, and for 3 generic mana and a green Phyrexian mana, you transform it, which basically means you're paying 2 life. Next turn, 2 mana this, 3 mana, you flip it, you pay 2 life, you flip this boy over into a Blight Sower Thallid, and the thing it does immediately is it makes you a 1/1 green Phyrexian sapling creature token, and that's when it transforms or it dies.
Yep.
So that 3/3 stat is super duper important, particularly in the early game. It's leaving bodies coming and going, which is also great. It doesn't make you feel like you've put all of your eggs in one basket. You know what I mean? When you pay that 3 mana and that 2 life, you still have another body on the side. So if they kill it, you got something to chump with or something to use with later, convoke or whatever. But yeah, this guy's just super efficient, and I've loved it every time I played it.
Yeah. Small spoiler alert for my list, but I didn't want to have too many black-green cards in my multicolored cards in my list. But this card's amazing. I love this card. Again, with the sacrifice deck, you have a Phyrexian's Matter deck also, and this makes a ton of Phyrexians. There's very few games where I would rather do something else than play this on 2 and flip it on 3.
I think this card is very good, very playable. As spoiler alert, I didn't put it on my list because I think there is a much better one of this cycle that I will argue for later on in the episode.
Fair enough.
We'll see. We'll talk about it. Let's move on here to our number 7. Ribbon, what you got?
Hey, speaking of black-green uncommons, I wanted to put an invasion on my list, and the one that has, surprised me, I guess, has been Invasion of Lorwyn. I really enjoy Invasion of Lorwyn. I don't know. I read it the first time and was like, I don't know. This is 6 mana removal, kind of a derpy kind of removal spell, kind of a derpy body on the back. Seems pretty slow, but the format is slow enough that this kid is an all-star. Invasion of Lorwyn is 4 generic, black-green. It has 5 defense, and when it enters the battlefield, you destroy target non-elf creature an opponent controls with power X or less, where X is the number of lands you control, and it flips into Winnowing Forces, which is an elf warrior whose power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. So you get a removal spell immediately. Very often that removal spell will lead you to a favorable combat in which you can attack Invasion of Lorwyn and usually get a 6/6 out of it. So Invasion of Lorwyn has been spectacular for me at getting rid of annoying flyers or annoying reach creatures or anything that is causing me trouble. And then the Winnowing Forces on the back very quickly is like a 9/9 or a 10/10 and just takes over the board by itself.
Yeah, it becomes...
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you.
No, you.
I've been impressed by all of the battles. I didn't think I was going to like them quite as much as I do. Even the ones that seem underwhelming to me have very good strategic use, and this is, I think, one of the better of the bunch.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and it was fun to sort of read some thought processes about, there's a mini game that all of a sudden becomes prevalent, and what do you do with that? And having defense numbers high enough that you don't just automatically flip them, play and flip immediately. There's a few, and they obviously push them at the higher rarities, but 5 defense on this usually takes me 2 turns. You'll have a favored combat, but not always a combat that lets you always get through all 5 damage, or your opponent will just chump block it instead of letting you do it. But once you do, this thing is a monster and becomes the abyss pretty quickly. Nerd Girl, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is the last of 2 hires.
Ooh, okay then. Well, I get to talk about number 7. Now look, I don't normally do this. This is a Ruben Bressler special of I didn't know where to put this card, so I put it equal to its mana cost. And I was like, as good as any because it's a cool card. Because it's a rare, and I didn't want to put a ton of rares or mythics. I don't even think I have a mythic on here. But I did want to put some cards that I felt was really impacting my limited play in ways that I wasn't expecting. And in particular ways I wasn't expecting this one is that I can resolve 7 mana spells in this format. And that's kind of awesome. Like, I'm enjoying that. I know we've had it before and we'll have it again, but the interim between the time since we can resolve 7 mana spells in limit environment has been a minute. Now, I know Strixhaven was incredibly slow, but there's been a few since then. All I'm saying is when you breach the multiverse, you can open breach the multiverse and play it and be confident that you can play it. That's amazing. That helps define what is it like playing Marks of the Machines Limited? You can resolve this spell reasonably. Breach the Multiverse is 2 black and 5 generic mana for a rare sorcery that says each player mills 10 cards. For each player, choose a creature or planeswalker card in that player's graveyard. Put those cards onto the battlefield under your control. Then each creature you control becomes a Phyrexian in addition to its other types. You can resolve this spell reasonably. It's also, and because of the way this crazy environment is, it's not necessarily going to instantly win the game. That's another amazing factor of this format that just blows my mind. So that's why it's my number 7.
Yeah, it feels nice. Not only are we getting to resolve 7 mana double pipped spells, I mean, it's been a few months since I've resolved, I don't know, a 4-drop and had it be relevant to the game that wasn't already over. Like, a lot of times you just play your 4-drop and then you kill them anyway, or you play your 4-drop and then you're dead on your turn because it doesn't do enough.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it feels very, very good that we're getting to play some of these more grindy, fun cards.
Yeah, and Breach the Multiverse is the poster child, I think, for a limited rare. Right? Big splashy effect. When you cast it, you almost always win. I don't think I've beaten this card yet, and I haven't had it yet. It's just a very good feeling limited card, and there are so many varied cards in this set because we were pulling all these legends from all these other places with the fanciful frames and whatnot. So you can realistically mill your opponent's Elishnorn Grand Cenobite, right? Or Shale Dread Whispered One, and put it on the battlefield under your control, in addition to your own stuff. So, at the very worst, it's a 2-for-1 that mills your opponent and yourself 10. And oh, by the way, there is a deck that requires you need 8 cards in your graveyard to turn stuff on. Very, very splashy, very fun. Like, if I lose to this card, I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, you want a 7 mana spell to kind of win you the game, but not just say win the game on it. Right. Let's do something cool with it and see how crazy it can get. And this format can definitely get crazy. So that is the last time you're going to hear from me for a couple of spots, as my number 6 and my number 5 are my hires on my list. So, Ruben, what is your number 6?
My number 6, I mean, I'm not telling any secrets. Most of my list is like, this card's good, this card's good, this card's good. I mean, Fire Prophecy was one of the best commons in Ikoria.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if you print a Fire Prophecy that can also target planeswalkers or battles? Well, then you have a playable common. Volcanic Spite is a very good card.
Mm-hmm.
1 generic and a red gives you an instant that says deal 3 damage to target creature, planeswalker, or battle. You may put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library. If you do, draw a card. When Fire Prophecy came out, we were like, oh, this is like relevatory. This is a new paradigm, and I'm glad to see that they took that to heart and are upgrading it and keeping that in the environments.
Yeah, this card was a top 10, no questions asked, probably for all of us. The reason it's not on my list is because looking at the list of commons and uncommons that I thought were the best in the format, 70% of them were removal. So I decided, rather than pick and choose, I just decided removal is good. We know removal is good. This is the best of the bunch, of course, but that it sort of speaks for itself in that way, in that, like, nobody needs us to tell them that this card is insane, because it just is absolutely home run, first pickable content every time.
Yeah, I mean, 2 mana deal 3, but also letting you cycle through is just like, it's good, clean living. It's good, clean magic. I appreciate this, that the fact that they made this spell, particularly that would kind of, also include battles. There's a bunch of sort of also include battles things that I like and appreciate, and this is definitely one of them. And this thing's already seen some play and constructed. I'm running into it, which is nice because it's efficient, you know?
Yeah.
Nerd Girl, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is a card that surprised me. I actually kind of put it in my deck because I was a little light in the spot. And I was like, oh yeah, I've got some interactions with this card and it like will be fine. It will probably most likely just be a filler. It's a Phyrexian. I had like one if a Phyrexian dies, scry kind of thing. And I had a few things that targeted. So we're going to talk about Tiller of Flesh. It is 3 colorless and a white. It's a Phyrexian Knight. It's a 2/4 that says whenever a spell targets one or more permanents, incubate 2. So again, it was a Phyrexian. I had a little synergy there. I had like a pump spell and I was like, oh, like it's a filler that'll do the thing. Well, it targets not just permanents you control, and it says 1 or more. Usually it says exactly 1. And it's also permanents, not creatures. So cards like Blighted Burgeoning also trigger this card, which is going to incubate itself. Mm-hmm. And it works really well with removal. So you're removing their cards, you get a treasure from your removal, you get to incubate 2, you ramp up and fix your mana and get to incubate, 2/2. It piles on so well, and there's so many things that are targeting, and there's so many good blink and protection spells in this format in white that this card is an absolute home run.
Absolutely. I've been endlessly impressed with this card. I mean, 2/4 for 4 means you can stand in front of all the Incubate 3 stuff that's happening, and not to mention the Incubate 2. There's a bunch of Convoke stuff in this set that targets, so you can tap out for this on 4 and play something like Aerial Boost or Burning Sun's Fury, and very easily just build up a huge mass of these Incubator tokens.
Yeah, this is a card that I've encountered so little per se, because I think it's just being picked highly, that I absolutely misread it. And now I feel dumb because there's been at least one time where I did not put this in my deck because I don't have enough stuff I'm going to target it with or my stuff with because I was just straight misreading it. Wow, that card's insane.
Yeah. Or just the fact that it says permanent and not creature. Like I definitely read that, but in my head, Blighted Burgeoning did not trigger this because that's just so unique to this particular card.
Right.
And I was just like, where did I get this? Oh, this is better than I thought. Yeah,
that's amazing. All right, let's move on here to number 5. Ruben, what's number 5?
My number 5 is my second favorite of the multicolor signpost uncommons. Spoiler alert, my favorite is at number 1. But this card is a beating. I have absolutely won games with this going unchecked by itself. You don't need anything else other than this card and like a couple of incubator tokens. Elvish Vat Keeper is spectacularly good. If I untap with it, I don't know how you really lose. Elvish Vat Keeper is a generic, a black and a green for a Phyrexian elf. It's a 3/3 for 3, so we got Trained Armadon stats. Like, that's a good place to start. When it enters the battlefield, you incubate 2. So it's got to come into play effect. We've got a thing, even if it dies immediately to that volcanic spike. But we're not done. Pay 5 generic mana, transform target incubator token you control, double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. So even if you're only incubating 2, you're turning those into 4/4s. Not to mention the fact that there's a bunch of incubate 3s, there's at least a few incubate 4s and 5s out there. Mm-hmm. And if you're transforming, the incubate 5 that comes with your Tangled Skyline into a 10/10, nothing's ever bigger than that.
Yeah, the incubate has been surprisingly impressive in that there are just so many things that incubate. It's sort of like proliferate was in the last set, where it was like you just get enough of these things stapled on where it's just going to make a really huge impact on your board state. And I wasn't really thinking that. I was like, yeah, okay, a couple of incubates, maybe I have a couple extra creatures to sacrifice from like my removal spells or whatever. But no, it actually builds up quite an army with how many there are, and getting to transform them and make them huge is just very powerful.
It was like the dynamic that this set gives you with all the different ways that you can use your mana, the decision trees. Do I flip this now? Do I wait? I don't have 4 mana. I've got 4 mana. I don't have 5 mana for the Vat Keeper. Do I hold that up? Should I hold that up? Like, all of that stuff just makes this far more interesting, I think, than a lot of other limited environments, because you're making creatures, but you're kind of not, right? And that's wild. That's new and interesting, and I love that. Nerd Girl, what is number 5?
My number 5 is another sort of simple card, but I think a staple in just about any limited deck that I have that can run the card. and that is Overgrown Pest. 2 colorless and a green, you get a 2/2 pest that when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a land or a double-faced card from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. There are enough double-faced cards in the format to where it's not unrealistic that, you're going to be able to get one of those flip cards, whether there is one of the cycled flips or one of the battles. That it's very, very reasonable to have in just the average deck. So, early it fixes and guarantees you're hitting those 4 drops. And then late game, it's just digging you into more gas, which is really nice that it sort of scales with you, which most of these sort of like mana dorks don't necessarily do.
Yeah, I've been very impressed by the pest. Whenever I've played it, even if it just gets you a land, perfectly reasonable. But the fact that it can dig you into one of the invasions, the fact that it can get you into something that flips later on and gives you big value later in the game, extremely impressed by this just value card.
Yeah, I always appreciate cards that on their own, doesn't matter what archetype you're in. You're playing a 3-mana 2/2. Why would you do it? What's it doing for you? Oh, this is cool. This is helping you in a variety of ways. You understand that. But it gets better depending on what your deck is doing. Like in the blue-green deck, this is the all-star, common, finding all your sweet transformability cards and going from there, which I think is awesome. It gets that level up, but it doesn't need to be leveled up to be good, right? So that's awesome. So let's move on here to number 4. Speaking of signpost uncommons, now that I can rejoin the chitter chat officially with my picks, this is one that is just an absolute beating. It's one of those cards that you need to have a lot of good picks. You need to be able to have gotten a little bit lucky in terms of the cards that you saw. It's very tribal based, as any lord would be. But Marshal of Zhalfir, it's a scary Magic card because it's stopping your best stuff. And when you think you got the board kind of locked down a little bit, it can start tapping your stuff, and that's really annoying. Marshal of Zhalfir is a blue and a white mana for a 2/2 uncommon human knight. Other knights you control get +1/+1, and for a white and a blue mana, you tap another target creature. So it is solid on turn 2. It is great in your knights deck. It's great in your blue-white deck that isn't necessarily all knights, it's just a good tapper. It fills all those roles while also still being just efficient and good.
Yeah.
My one little, it's not even my story, but during the Command Fest Orlando, Alias's deck in her sealed had 3 of these. Whoa. And it was the most disgusting thing. No bombs, no anything, just 3 of these. And it was just the easiest XO of all time. This card is bananas, especially in multiples. It makes your deck super unreasonable.
Wow. That's disgusting.
That is disgusting.
Sigiled Sentinel is a very good common in the Knights deck. I've been beating the crap out of people with Zalfrin Lancer, which is another card for the Knights deck. The blue-white Knights deck is real, and it is playable. There aren't nearly as many Knights as there are Phyrexians, for example. We're not making incubated Knight tokens, but if you're able to put the deck together, this is a fantastic Lord that has super pressure early that is able to maintain that pressure late, because as you know, when you play tribal decks, you don't want to put your Lord in danger, so why not put him to work tapping your opponent's blockers down?
There you go. And it's funny to me, and I think Wizards has gotten a little looser in making Lords, just period. You know what I mean? Like cards that just pump a type of thing because they can. They're uncommons now. They're not just rares. They're not just meant for just core sets or sets that have to be a certain kind or way for them to put them in there. But yeah, sure, that's great. Marshal is Zhalfir pumps Knights. Why not? Who cares? Ruben, what's number 4?
My number 4 is I have a favorite deck. My favorite deck is the junk colored, the Thalia and Gitrog Monster colored Incubator Tokens deck. But unfortunately for me, my second favorite deck is the Convoke deck that's red-blue. So I have to choose very early between my 2 favorite things. And one of my favorite things to get a lot of in that blue-red Convoke deck is one of the best Windrakes of all time, and that's Preening Champion. Preening Champion is 2 generic and a blue for a 2/2 bird knight. So it also goes in the knight deck, just in case you needed more stuff, a flyer for your knight's deck. 2/2 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you make a 1/1 blue and red elemental creature token. So, Obviously perfect for the Convoke deck. Allows you to play all of your Convoke things that you could possibly ever want. In addition to, you can find your... you can get in for 2 damage while maintaining that extra blocker or that extra Convoker behind.
Flying knights are scary.
Yeah.
I mean, according to 17lands.com, this is the best common. It's not even close. It's not even close. This is the number one if it is in your hand opening game. It's fan freaking tastic. It's for whatever reason, however the format shakes out, A, having that evasion, B, making that extra blocker / convoker, C, it goes in the Knights deck. It goes in every blue deck. You're going to play no matter how many copies you have, play another one on turn 4, play another one on turn 5, who cares? It's great. And so it kind of does everything. And I was a little surprised, but I'll take it. I've been playing every one I can get my hands on.
The other thing too is that there are so many good bombs. Now, in this set, they're not necessarily unbeatable, that they don't necessarily come down and end the game, but that makes removal become more at a premium. So anytime you're needing to force your opponent to remove something and use something premium to kill your 3-drop that's just a slight, evasive creature that's going to put them on a clock, it gets scary over time. It forces them to, knee-jerk reaction. I'm going to have to deal with this bird eventually, deal with it now. Haha, just kidding. I've got this other, just rare, but it's a duo team up card, and then that'll end the game, certainly.
Right. I don't want to stop the Windrake. It's just a Windrake.
Right.
And then it can end up.
You gotta.
And then you're dead.
And you die. Yeah. Nerd Girl, what's number 4?
My number 4 is the card that the submission I'm going to make to tell you, Evan, that your transform card was not the premium transform card. However, the Herbology Instructor is indeed the premier transform card.
That's pretty good. Not wrong.
We have a colorless and a green for a 1/3 Tree Folk Druid. It's a 1/3 that says, when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. It's pretty nifty. We don't have a lot of life gain synergies in the format, but it's really handy to have. For 6 and a Phyrexian black, you can transform the Instructor, activate only as a sorcery. It transforms into a 3/3 that says, when this creature transforms, it gives -0/-X to target creature until end of turn, where X is its power, which is going to be 3, unless you got some counters on it. This card fills your curve beautifully. It stops all of the 2/2 incubate tokens that are going to be coming through. Most of them are 2/2s. It's great on curve. And then it comes and turns into a removal with a decent body. This is a 3/3 that you essentially played on turn 2 to, like I said, fill out those curves, stall your game, and then it removes some pretty hefty stuff, and there are a lot of X3s in the format worth removing.
Yeah.
Including this one.
Yeah, exactly. Other Herbology
Structures.
Yeah, Herbie's pretty good. I've been pretty impressed by it, honestly. I thought that the cost of 6 and a black Phyrexian was going to be a little prohibitive. I was like, all right, it's a 1/3 that gains me 3 life. I don't know if I'm really going to... But no, it's actually been... you get to those mid-range states where you're like, well, we're all kind of top decking or at least equivalent on cards, and now I've at least got this other thing. Yeah, grindy games.
And it's interesting to me because, this card is definitely good, and I'm not saying it's necessarily worse than my choice or whatever. But I would say that it's interesting in that you can really prepare for it. Like if they drop it on turn 2 and they gain 3 life, it's there. It's there the whole time. When they're going to be able to get that land drop next turn. And I've been able to play around that stuff and use certain pieces of removal, knowing that, they're at 5 lands now. Let's lock this guy down, because you can see it coming a little bit.
If you're
then you're using your lockdown on my 2-drop, which sounds fantastic. That's what makes it so premium.
Yeah, but your 2-drop also kills things, so that's
I was going to say
exactly.
Which is why I'm using
if you're changing your entire game plan based on my 2-drop that gained 3 life, I'm a happy camper.
That's the format. All right, let's move on here to number 3. Ruben, what you got?
Speaking of 2-drops that make you change your entire life cycle, I love incubator tokens. I don't know, they made the archetype that makes incubator tokens just very good. Mm-hmm. And Norn's Inquisitor is just a beating. Every time I've ever played it, every time I draft it, I'm like, I want to blink this and return it to my hand as often as possible. And oh, by the way, it's also a knight. Because why not? Generic into white gets you a 1/1 uncommon Phyrexian Knight. So the 2 premier creature types of the format on 1 card. Sign me up. When it enters the battlefield, you incubate 2, and whenever a permanent you control transforms into a Phyrexian, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So that 2/2 incubate token that you made is a 3/3. Not to mention the fact that Herbie flips over into a 4/4. The blighted frog gentleman flips over and gets bigger as well. So Norn's Inquisitor is just an incredible amount of value over the course of a long and grindy game.
Short story time. I got someone with this card. They had it and they attacked me with it, thinking that they would get to transform their thing and would put a counter on it. And then I just got to eat it because they transformed their incubate token, and they're thinking that their thing would grow, but the incubate token grew. So the wording on that is a little weird because it says on it, not, you know what I mean? Not it, but the thing that it transformed. Yes, it's a little tricky.
Yeah, a little bit of a dangling modifier there.
Interesting. Yeah. And I've certainly gotten with some weird readings before. But yeah, the long-term value of this is it's one of those cards that you kind of have to play to see it work. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that sounds kind of neat. We'll see. But you're transforming Phyrexians all the freaking time. And it don't take much before Norn's Inquisitor becomes a serious problem. And then you have that thing where you're like, am I going to use my removal on a 1/1? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not actively killing me, but it's really kind of killing me, which is, I think, fantastic. Nerd Girl, what's number 3?
The number 3 is a card that I'm surprised is probably not on any of your guys. I guess Evan has a couple of hires, so it could be. But you know what's really, really good? When you, like, take very good abilities from other formats and put them on, like, better creatures for limited. Now, I agree, it's not as good, but when you're talking Snapcaster abilities, you know, you can add the tax to it and put it onto an evasive creature, and I think you have a home run card with Halo Forger. Colorless, blue, and a black. You have a Fairy Rogue, always a very good creature type. It's a 3/1 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay X. When you do, you may cast an instant or sorcery card with mana value X from a graveyard without paying its mana cost. If you do, exile it instead. So now you are getting to play the best spell that was played in the game, instance or sorcery from yours or your opponent's graveyard. You get a 3-powered flyer for 3 mana on curve if you need it. It does a lot of work, and this card is very good early and it's very good late.
Oh yeah, this was my number 6 for a reason. This card is bananas. This card is ridiculous. This card is usually, I mean, there's two things about this. If it's on curve, play it on curve because that pressure is better than whatever spell you might be getting later. Just for those who don't know, you should definitely play this on curve. But if you're not playing it on curve, hold it because you want to play it for 6 mana, get that 3 mana removal spell while also having a 3/1 evasive flyer, which is a whole bunch of damage. This card is one of my favorites in limited. It's one of the, like, definitely signposts, like, you know, the alarms are blinking. You should play blue black if you see this coming third or later because this thing is a monster.
And it's not even, it doesn't ask anything of you. Your deck, it goes in any deck that can cast it. Some of the signpost uncommons, like you need a bunch of knights in your deck, or you need a bunch of incubator tokens in your deck, or you need a bunch of convoke in your deck. This asks nothing of you. This just wants to be a Direfleet Daredevil or a Rishadan Airship. This is all that wants to do. Play it as a 3/1 flyer that'll kill your opponent by itself on turn 3, or on turn 7, flashback your removal spell, or your opponent's removal spell, and then start killing them. Card is extremely good. I just don't play blue-black. I haven't really gotten the blue-black deck down yet. But it you know, if I'm ever able to put that deck together, milling both of us, stealing removal spells from my opponents, then yeah, absolutely top of my list.
Sure. You know, it's funny because according to I think Untapped.gg, blue-black is the best deck in draft. It really is. And
I'm missing out.
Well, here's the thing. you don't have to care about that milling crap. You don't have to care about the 8 cards crap. It doesn't matter. Your card quality is so high. In fact, you just segued me so hard into my number 3, because this is one of the absolute beatings that you get to play when you're playing blue-black. I've played against this card in Constructed multiple times now. This is an uncommon, and it is the Invasion of Amonkhet. It is a blue, a black, and a generic mana for an uncommon battle siege. When it enters the battlefield, each player mills 3 cards, then each opponent discards a card, and you draw a card. I didn't care if it mills cards. It didn't have to mill cards. You lose a card, I'm up a card, and this format is already gigantic. We're not done. It flips over after 4 defenses taken away into the Lazotep Convert, which is a 4/4, and you may have entered the battlefield as a copy of any creature in a graveyard, except it's a 4/4 black zombie in addition to its other types. If you flip over their Elish Norn, Grand Cenobite, if you flip over something weird, great. And if you don't, it's still a 4/4, which is awesome. But I'm playing this against a freaking standard because this turns into a Traxa. And I'm like, oh, God. Because everyone's trying to play a Traxa Reanimator. Well, this just flips over and takes and says thanks. It's been real. And I have been taking the beatings from this in Limited as well.
Yeah. It's a good card advantage. It splits the difference between like the mind rot. And then turns into a solid creature no matter what. And then sometimes it's just absolutely outrageous. And there's certainly enough bombs in this format to where you'll get some great value.
Yeah. This card puts 4 cards into your opponent's graveyard by itself, which is plenty of grist for the mill. And grist for the mill. See what I... and then it flips over into a 4/4 of whatever the best thing in the graveyard is. So if there's been any removal spells, if there's been any combat that has happened, a 4/4 body that turns into that, and you get those come into play abilities. Stealing your opponent's Atraxa gets you more Invasion of Amonkhet also, which is pretty dope.
It's nuts.
Yeah, this card, this is probably the strongest invasion to attack, in my opinion.
It's very scary. I mean, I've played against people who've played the black spell that removes counters just to flip this thing over.
Sure.
Because, again, if you have Atraxa in your graveyard, you still have the Atraxa. This is any graveyard. It doesn't matter who's anybody got something cool. It's yours now, and that's awesome. Let's move on here to number 2. Ruben, what's number 2?
Well, I mean, we were talking about the quality of black removal in the set, and I could have picked any of the black removal and put it at my number 2. There's an excellent Convoke uncommon. There's an excellent Convoke rare. There's a 2-mana sacrifice deck one, but I decided to go with just good old-fashioned instant speed, destroy target creature or planeswalker, make a treasure token. Deadly Derision. It's a little boring, but you know what? That's fine. It's fine to be boring. It's also still amazing. 2 generic black gets you destroy target creature or planeswalker on a common, create a treasure token, and we get Duretti in the art and in the flavor text.
It's very good. That treasure token is coming in handy in this format with, like I said, all of the double pips, white, green. It's super important, and you're going to get a lot out of it. And I think I would run 4 or 5 of these if I had them.
It's funny. It's been almost 10 years since Theros. And, when you had Heroes Downfall, say destroy target planeswalker was a big deal. And there was a question of just like, well, how long is it going to be before we have more destroy target planeswalkers or blank target planeswalkers? And these days, it's just uncommons, just destroy a creature or planeswalker, deal damage to a creature or planeswalker. And that's just normal everyday stuff. And it's wild how that has kind of become normalized as much as it has. Nerd Girl, what's number 2?
All right, my number 2 is, I don't think we've actually talked about this cycle. I could be wrong, but speaking of cycle, this is a really, really good cycle. I picked my favorite of the bunch, and we're going to talk about the Alabaster Host Intercessor. This is a 6-mana, 5 colorless, and a white for a Phyrexian Samurai. It's a 3/4. When it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until the host leaves the battlefield. And it also has plane cycling too. There is a full cycle of these cycling cards, and I think that they are all absolutely outstanding. And the fact that this is 6 mana put me off a little bit at first, but it we are getting that far in the games. It's also a 4 power, which avoids some of the premier like red removal. So it's kind of got that sweet spot, and it's definitely coming in handy. I'm certainly in sealed. I'm casting multiple of these and never having a problem getting that far into the game.
Yeah, there's a full giant commons that have basic land cycling, and I think that Morrow recently said that basic land cycling was either becoming evergreen or deciduous.
Good.
I believe I saw that happen, and all of this cycle I've played in my decks. The red one that has haste, the black one that has backup 2 and menace. And this one also, this one being a Oblivion Ring effect that doesn't die to your -3/-3s or your 3 damage effects. Being able to blink it to protect it and change out what thing is taken away from your opponent's board. Extremely impressed with this card.
Yeah, I think there's an amount of sort of like PTSD that you get when you play through a stupidly fast format, and the next format's like, hey, there's a 6 mana card that's really good, and you're like, 6 mana? Like, right. You can play 6 mana cards unlimited? Is that a thing you can do now? And that is a thing that you can do now, which is great. And this card is here. If it's deciduous, great. If it's whatever term they need for it to come back, bring it back because it's great. For my number 2 here, this is one of my favorite cards that, it showed up in Dominaria. Again, one of my favorite, my number 1 draft format, limited format of all time. And it's been wild to see how it really translates into, this is one of the uncommon legends that we talked about, the multi-killer or the multiverse legends. Also one of the most winningest cards in its color, which is great. And man, it took me to the brink. I'm talking the brink of beating a Sheoldred that had been flipped and went through all of her cycles. I'm talking They had 30-something creatures on the board, all the creatures from all the graveyards, and I was this close to winning, and somehow my opponent could read the fact that in my hand was the only way to kill them at 2 life, and that was Tetsuko Umezawa, Fugitive, and they killed one of my 1/1s, and that's how I lost. Because Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive is a fantastic Magic card. It is a multiverse legend. It is a blue and a generic mana for a 1/3 uncommon legendary human rogue, and creatures you control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. So that includes creatures like Halo Forager, now cannot be blocked. Your token from Breeding Champion cannot be blocked. All these weird little tiny creatures you didn't think about, all of a sudden they can't do anything to stop you. And that's been really sweet.
Yeah, this was a reprint from the original Dominaria one, and it was a full archetype that you could just build around. And it's not that good unless you're kind of building around it, so it's not super uncommon to get 2 or sometimes even 3 of these in your deck to just make it super consistent. And in the original set, there was another one that was like if you played a heroic card, historic card, it would be unblockable, and it itself was also just triggered by this because it was a 2/1. It's a great deck to build around. I don't think it's as strong here as it was in the original Dominaria, but still very good.
Yeah, Tetsuko, particularly in the Convoke deck, I find is just insane. I mean, I want to have a 2-drop every single time that I'm playing that deck, because then I get to play the draw 2 cards Convoke for 4 mana. But also, this makes your elemental tokens, your red and blue elemental tokens, finishers, which is very difficult to do. Sometimes most of the time you get outclassed very quickly, and this enables you, especially by incubator tokens, and now those 2/2s can't block your 1/1s, which is very nice.
Yeah, it's weird because I recall when it was like its own archetype thing for sure. And in this set, in this environment, it just works really strangely. You go, this format is so powerful, but I'm dying to these 1/1 elemental tokens because I can't block them. And that's just amazing. All right, let's move on here to our number 1. Ruben, what's number 1?
My number 1 is a card that I love, and I don't particularly, I grew to love it, I guess. I didn't see it as being my favorite uncommon in the set when the set was spoiled, but I love Incubate so much. I love building the Incubate deck so much. I love playing these colors so much, the mid-range value, the ability to blink this with various effects, the abilities that, or the interactions that this has, and the fact that it pumps my entire team without itself being a creature. My number 1 is Sculpted Perfection. Sculpted Perfection is 2 generic, white-black for an enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, you incubate 2, and Phyrexians you control get +1/+1. I love Tribal. I love Incubate. This is like exact everything I want in a Magic card.
They stack so well. There's like the white enchantment. There's a black one that scries. The white one gives vigilance. And then there's this one. One of my sealed pools had 2 of these and 1 of each of the others. And oh my god, it was absolutely backbreaking. I completely whiffed on all my rares. Did not matter.
Yep.
The stacking power of these enchantments are very, very strong.
Nice. I mean, with stuff like Norn's Inquisitor, it's got all those little tiny things that just add up to very, very strong advantages. Whereas normally seeing 4 mana kind of Glorious Anthem effects, you're just like, eh. But like, no, it actually, comes along with the creature, makes that creature bigger, makes all your other stuff bigger, works in the whole archetype, kind of drives the entire archetype if you get it early. It's been fantastic. So that's a fun card. Nerd Girl, what's number 1?
All right, so my number 1 is, I believe, my only siege or battle. We're going to talk about the Invasion of Kamigawa.
Ooh.
It's a little bit underwhelming on the front side for what you get. I think it's one of the worst front sides, but that is because the back side is so good. This is a 3 colorless and a blue for sorcery speed. Tap down your target creature and put a stun counter on it. Pretty expensive, doesn't do a lot, but because it's doing that, it is actually sort of enabling you to unlock the backside even quicker. And the backside, once you deal 4 points of damage to it, it's going to flip to the Rooftop Saboteurs, a Moonfolk Ninja 2/3 flyer. That when it deals combat damage to a player or a battle, you get to draw a card. This is very, very good. It's got great stats. It battles with a lot of the other flyers, like the Windrakes that we were seeing earlier in the set, or earlier in the top 10. So it doesn't really get contested super easily in the skies, and draw every single time you get that through is very, very strong. It enables it so you can flip it itself because it's locking down those blockers, and it feels great to me.
Yeah. This card is the best invasion at flipping invasions, because you're not losing any amount of value or tempo really by attacking your battles. You're gaining that card advantage back by being able to deal damage to them. Not to mention the fact, as you mentioned, that 2/3 flying body is so perfect in this environment.
Oh yeah, I mean this fits just perfectly in that. I would say honestly, I felt like this has been one of the stronger front halves because we're bombs. Lock down your bomb, flip over the invasion, play the creature that's going to give me card advantage, and you still can't block it if that creature had flying. Just a huge amount of advantage. No one wants to get hit with a 2/3. Everyone's trying their best to stop it. It goes in every single blue deck that I can imagine. I play every single copy that I have. I think it's terrific. I love the hell out of this card. So let's talk about my number 1. And it's rare, but that's okay. Because again, this is one of those rares that, I knew it was good. I didn't know it was that good. And it's using one of the set mechanics, which I think is neat. It's one of those cards that I can't, I don't know if I've ever quite beaten this card. It's just been an absolute beating. But it's been a fun way to show, again, that you can kind of give up your whole board, per se. Like you can kind of tap out during your turns. You also don't just auto lose, which you could have in other formats, because Zephyr Singer is just a hell of a Magic card. It's not, I think, ever going to get there and constructed, but just as how do you make something just absolutely beat them in the face and limited? The damn thing has vigilance. It's 2 blue, 2 generic mana for a 3/4 rare Siren Pirate with Convoke, and it has flying and vigilance. And when it enters the battlefield, you put a flying counter on each creature that convoked it. You're 1000% tapping 4 creatures for this, and then they all have evasion. I don't know how you're ever going to stop that, particularly if they're halfway large creatures. Zephyr Singer has just been an absolute monster in ways that I haven't seen limited bombs be monsters before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I love the Convoke deck. I've had games where I was able to put 4 flying counters across my board, and the game was effectively over at that point. If you thought a 2/2 flyer was good, and you thought a 2/3 flyer was good, 3/4 flyer rules the skies. There's very little that's coming over a Zephyr Singer. And add on to that the fact that you're bringing your army up with it. This card is Very good. Always a first pick. And I wouldn't be so quick to say that this won't make it in Constructed, because I can definitely see a world where you want to play a creature on turn 2 and drop this on turn 3, or, that early kind of the classic like Curious Obsession blue deck that tries to get a bunch of, Siren Storm Tamers down and whatnot like that. This is able to come out effectively for free, allowing you to keep counterspell magic up, and is a very big body. Venerated Loxodon showed us that we could play these things that support our board and build for future turns. I don't see why we can't have Zephyr Singer in Constructed.
Yeah, this card, the Convoke makes it really, really scary. And then the other thing is that, it's not like a leap effect, it's just permanent. And I agree. I think this could definitely see some Constructed play. And in Limited, the bodies are low to the ground. A 3/4 is really a nice sweet spot. It eliminates almost all of the Incubate tokens as far as blocking goes. Nothing in the skies is going to be able to battle it. At best, you're looking at like a bounce most of the time here. So yeah, this card is absolutely first pickable for sure, and I wouldn't even worry about the double color, because there's a fair amount of treasures and fixing in this format as well.
Yeah, plenty of blue tokens and things. And that said, that was our top 10 limited March of the Machine cards. You'll see them on screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Nerd Girl's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win $50 worth of anything at CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Ruben.
One of the most balanced, like good speed, fun, limited environments I've played in a very long time. Like, hits the sweet spot of everything I want from a limited environment. Feels similar to the environments I love, like Dominaria and Return to Ravnica. Has the nostalgia factor, everything's there.
Yeah, Dave.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, Dave Humphreys did design work or development work for Dominaria, did development work for War of the Spark, did development work for this set, and all of those environments were A++ fantastic, and this is the follows in that tradition. That said, let's move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, ManaTraders.com, my co-host, MTG Nerd Girl, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.